Welcome to leg 4 of the Mighty Dashes cross-country, transoceanic, and round the world journey. We are on the ground right now at Flight Beam's KDEN, Denver International Airport, and the reason why it seems like this is a telephoto shot taken with a very, very, very long lens is because in effect it is. This is the shot from the control tower, and I just want to pull back so you can see just how freaking colossal this airport is. This is the airside complex of terminals, and all the way out to there, and all the way out to there, and then all the way out to about there, and an equal distance behind us is the airfield. And the airfield sits on some, I want to say 34,000 acres. I don't know why that sticks in my mind, but some absurdly huge amount of territory. If you just look at it, these are 2.5 miles. And so 2.5 miles, 5 miles, 7.5 miles, and the airport goes all the way out to here. So it is roughly equal in acreage to twice Manhattan Island. So it's just enormous. Now what we're going to do here in this crazy setup here is we are going to push back from here with our nose to the right, come on out here, taxi all the way out to here, take a little shortcut, and then go to runway 34 left. And runway 34 left happens to be the longest civilian runway in the United States, if not on Earth. It is 16,000 feet long, and that is mainly to make it long enough for any airplane loaded with any amount of fuel on any day to take off from here. So if you're a 747-400 and you've got a full load of passengers and cargo and a full load of fuel and you're bound for Tokyo, and it is 90 degrees out and we're 5,000 feet up, it'll take you a little while, but this is designed so you can do it. We've turned the chart upside down, and I just realized something. If we follow that taxiway out here, that will take us to this strip here. So what we want to do is actually, before we get there, we want to turn here onto what looks like Whiskey Alpha. So we will get onto taxiway Foxtrot and then to Alpha. There's Foxtrot. This would seem to be Alpha. This would be Whiskey Alpha. And have at it. We're sitting right here, remember. Oh, and it turns out that these two airside terminals that we see here didn't even show this one. Didn't even show this one, which is where the tower sits. And there is room to put more over here. So this place is just utterly insane. Now, that is one distinction. We're going to be flying out of a small city. The other distinction is, if you notice right here, blue needles. And if you notice on our FMS, we got nothing. And that's because we are not going to fly this thing using the FMS. We're going to fly this as if we didn't have any RNAV or GPS capabilities at all, and we're going to fly it VOR to VOR. In other words, we're going to fly it what would be termed slant alpha. You file the flight plan, and then after your name and call sign, you put a / and then an A for alpha. And slant alpha means radio navigation only. Slant G means GPS and RNAV. Slant L is very, very similar, except it also means that you can fly at very high altitudes and use reduced visual separation. And there are a bunch of other designations whose names escape me. There's some that indicate without a working transponder, and others that indicate with DME but not anything else, and others without DME. So it gets to be pretty elaborate. But before we go any further, let's plug in our new V speeds. It's going to be a flapped 5 takeoff because we only have 28 miles of runway to use, so we'll set that, and you'll notice that our V speeds are rather high. And actually our V2 should be high along with them, and there's a little glitch there, so make V2 143, and that should do us. Now, already we've tuned in some radio frequencies we're going to use, some VORs we're going to use. And the first one we are going to use is Denver itself. And that is 114.7, and I've got it set up here in Nav1. I have also got it in the standby for Nav2, and I'll explain why in a minute, but it'll help if we take a look at our route O flight here to Omaha, and what it's going to do is it's going to take us, as we head back to Denver, we are going to be taking off on runway 35 left, and that is this one, and we're going to, there is really no appropriate SID for us. There's a SID that flies us all the way out to Hayes Center, but at below 10,000 feet, and I don't want to do that. And there are a bunch of others that call for RNAV only, and there's a couple others still that don't require RNAV, but send us out to the south and to the west. So what we're going to do instead is we are going to count on getting vectors, and then count on being told to join the J60 airway. And the J60 airway is defined by the 070 radial out of Denver. So for our course, we're going to set 070. We could also set 250 and work the needles backwards. And we might actually have to, because I may have set this thing backwards. I always get bearings to and from the station and radials screwed up. I believe this is the 070 radial, and if it's the 070 radial, we can fly it, and I believe the needle or the designator will point away from the station, but the needle will point at our nose. The HSI here is designed so it basically gives you appropriate positional and situational awareness no matter where the station is with respect to the airplane. But I always get it backwards, so apologies in advance. I'm very dyslexic when it comes to this, which I'm going to have to learn not to be. Otherwise, we're going to start hitting things and straying outside of airspace. So we're going to go and join the J60, which means we'll loop around here to the right, and then we'll just come in on an intercept, and then we'll join it, and we're going to fly outbound on it all the way to Hayes Center. Now that is quite a distance. It's about 175 miles. So about halfway there, and there is a point on the map where it designates what is considered your switchover point. And I believe it's actually all the way to here, which would be odd, but we will, at some point, we will switch over to Hayes Center, and we will fly inbound on the 249 radial, or we set it for 269 and just fly through it. Then we will keep the station here, because remember, the distances in some cases are far enough away that you're going to still need to track a station outbound, before you can receive the station inbound and flip over. But we will switch over to Pawnee City, and we will fly that not quite like this, because we're going to fly a star into Omaha, the Marwee 1. So we're going to go to Pawnee City here, and we are going to fly outbound on the 031 until we cross, or come close to crossing, the 120 radial going inbound. And we'll turn to 300, and we'll track that inbound for 17 miles, and then we will fly our approach. And our approach is this one. If I can find it. It is actually an approach to the south with the winds today. So what that's going to mean is we will come in here from Omaha. We'll treat that as our initial approach fix. And then we will fly this away until we get to Zatar. And what we'll do is we'll track outbound on the localizer by that time. We'll get to Zatar, and then we will hook a 45-degree turn. We'll fly that for a minute. We will do a 180 and fly back 45 degrees with respect to the localizer, and then we will intercept the localizer, and that is what's called a procedure turn. And again, we're going to do this without any magenta line here to guide us. So, you know, they're all counting on us, and this is the way it used to be done. So it's, you know, it's not like we can't do it. We got an autopilot to help us. So I believe we probably should check our gear pins real quick first of all, and then get this party started. Those are our gear pins right there, so they're in. And we will set our field elevation for Omaha, which is 1,400 feet, which is 900 plus 5. And check everything else. Our heats are off, our anti-ice is off, our anti-collision light is red. Turn off our bleeds. Our fasten seatbelt signs now should come on, and we should shut the door. Very embarrassing to push back with your door open. And with that taken care of, turn our engine start selector to 2. We will make sure that our prop levers are at fuel cutoff, and I'm going to make note of this. Watch what happens when I move that up. You see how it jumps around? This is my shitty SciTech throttle quadrant. It pretty much goes wherever the hell it wants. So you know what we might do? We will just start by grabbing it. There we go. That's how it'll work. All right. Amazing how that works. Okay. Our auto feather's been tested, or it's testing itself right now. That is cool. We really don't need this FMS at all, so let's just get rid of it. Eliminate the temptation. And make sure our nose wheel steering is off, and now it is. And again, we're going to push back nose right, and then we're going to grope our way around this enormous airport and try to figure out how to do what needs to be done. So we'll go to data, And services and nose right. Listen to the German.
Ground, we are ready for pushback.
We are ready now, please release parking brake.
Yeah, I will. I'm releasing the parking brake.
Parking brakes released.
Pushing back now, you're clear to start the engine number 2.
Okay, we've turned our APU bleeds off. We do this, we come down here, we grab our condition lever, and gloriously, it actually works. We'll monitor our push. Look at that truck, it turns on a dime. Wow. All right, we'll end our push right here because we're in the alley.
Pushback complete, set the parking brake.
We'll listen to the German. Kill the caution.
Parking brake set. Can you get clearance at
Turn
number 1?
on. Nose gear steering.
The toe is free and clear of nose gear.
Flip ourselves over to 1.
Have a nice flight.
Come on down. Grab that. Monitor our start very quickly. We've got 4,000 pounds of fuel on each side. Got plenty of fuel to make it to Omaha. And we see that we've got a good start on 2, so we will move our prop levers, our condition levers forward. Watch for that to come up. Turn off our main bus tie. Let's work our way down this panel here. Turn on our heats. Turn on our taxi light. Work our way down here now. Turn off the APU gen. Turn off the APU. Turn our anti-collision light to white, turn our logo light on, and working our way down here. APU bleeds can come on. I'm going to very briefly put them on max just to defog the cockpit. And the reason why our number 1 AC gen is still cautioning, it's because we have not advanced the props on engine 1. So let's do that now and watch it'll extinguish. And it does. All right, now let's get our AFCS squared away. Make sure our parking brake is set. It is. Okay, we'll cruise up to initial of 190, heading for 270. And we'll check our heading is runway heading, and it is. We'll check our course, which is going to be helping us intercept the J60 airway, and that is right there. Let me make sure we're tuned in right on our radios. Mile high should be 114.7. And it is 114.7, 070, 3.4 miles. We are 3.4 miles away from the VOR, and the VOR is on the premises at this airport. So it just gives you just one more idea of how unbelievably huge this airport is. We are going to come out of our alleyway here, and you know, I'm going to cheat a little bit because I really want to see if we can turn. Okay, so we're going to not come around here. Instead, we're going to come out this way. All right, this is convoluted. I will say that. Turn our bleeds to min. And let us start to taxi. As we do, we will turn on our pumps and our auxes. PT was on, and our auto feather has checked out while we're there. Do my little fix here with this. Nice low resolution mouse. Alright, so that, we'll be able to see that. And our runway is going this way. This is just colossally big. Let's see if we can get out of here before that vehicle loops back and tries to kill us. On our way out, once we figure out which way we're going, we'll check our weather, set our altimeter. We're in the midst of a SIGMET here area. It looks like we've got some heavy-duty turbulence to contend with. And we're just clipping on out of here. Alright, if I'm not mistaken, we go straight this way. And we are looking for runway 35 left. Beautiful airport, truly beautiful airport from Flight Beam. Okay, we're on, oh, I love this. We're on Hotel, and we just crossed Bravo Sierra. Very nice. Now we want to go to Foxtrot. We do not want to go to Golf. Again, if I'm not mistaken. And then we want to go this way. And I believe we want to cross, just coming up. I'm going to stop right here because I am not 100% sure how to go. And this is our first time at the airport, so we are at Foxtrot and Alpha November. Let's take a look. There is no shame in asking for directions. There really isn't. Better to do that than to end up on somebody's runway. Alright, so this is just, it is, though, absolutely a trip. Okay, so we've pulled out of here, and there is Foxtrot and Alpha November. So if we make a left on Foxtrot and then a right on Whiskey Alpha, that should get us to the end of our runway. So we'll make a left here. And again, the taxi distances are just stupendous. I can only hope that the gains in efficiency to having all these runways and having a big hub for United outweigh just the insane craziness of, you know, taxiing for 5 miles before you get to the gate. I would assume they do, because they wouldn't put the airport here otherwise. And one good way to tell that we are taking the right taxiway is that our runway heading is behind us, so we're parallel to the runway and going backwards on it. Now, I don't think we go all the way over there past us because that will take us diagonally to yet another runway. So we will go past the de-icing pads here, and head out to what I think is going to be 35 left. Let's just quickly again stop and reorient ourselves because again there's no shame in that. Ordinarily you'd be talking to ground control and they would be giving you explicit directions, but they would assume that you sort of knew what you were doing. So we are now at the de-ice pads right. If I had to guess, we're at the de-ice pads right over here. And if we go to Whiskey Bravo, we will go for an intersection departure here, which would be fine, but let's try to do it right. So I'm going to keep going here on Foxtrot Alpha, past the de-icing pads, and hope that gets us where we need to go. So once again, we are parallel to the runway and heading away from it. And I know this isn't exactly confidence-inspiring here, but alright, so we should make a right here because there are the other de-icing pads. And this should be Whiskey Alpha, so that should do us. Nothing worse than taxiing to the wrong runway, especially at a smaller field when that wrong runway might be unusably short. And look at this. This has the capability to de-ice an air force of airplanes. And if I'm not saying much, it's because I'm at a loss for words. This is like taxiing through the most desolate and largest expanse of frozen tundra outside of course, the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field. It is just weird. And the distances are unbelievable. I mean, whoever picked up this real estate picked it up at a bargain, I'm sure. And they wanted to make sure that over the years they didn't end up having to take anybody's houses to expand. Alright, we said 34L, and this is 34L. We made it. just quickly hold short here for 1 second and get our final, I think the term is get our final craps squared away. So our flaps are set and our trim is set. That is the runway heading that way, and it is perpendicular to us. And 34L is, let's see, we came right through these anti-icing, these de-icing pads and went this way. All right. And again, we're going to be flying runway heading, and then we're going to be turning right to 25, make it about 280 to join or intercept the J60 airway coming out of here. And our altimeter is set. Let's just check our weather. 2987, and the winds are perfect for us, so that's good. We chose wisely. 2987. Double check our field elevation, and it matches. Turn off our gust lock. Turn on our landing lights. Turn off our taxi lights. Everything else is good. APU is off. Bleeds are at min. Emergency lights are armed. Seatbelt signs are on. Heats are on. So let's go flying. Out comes the parking brake. And you're going to see as we turn onto this runway that you can almost not see the end of it because of the curvature of the earth. It is absurdly long. It's 2,000, well, it's 1,500 feet longer than 3-1 left at Kennedy. And, well, now it's the same width, but previously to Kennedy widening out its runway, it was 50 feet wider as well. So this can basically fly anything. Okay, condition levers are max, radios are set in heading select mode. We basically only have a required rate of climb, and we're going to make it with plenty to spare here. We're going to come screaming off of this runway. Now we are porky, and we are high up, but it's also a cold day, not a hot one. So, and we could only, in this length of runway, take off, land again, take off and land again probably. So essentially there is no V-speed. We will be flying before we would have to make the decision to go or not go. And there's V1 and rotate. And here's gear up. A little bit of wind. Hey, that's fun. So we are going to climb here, runway heading. You notice how we're crossing that radial. You see right there? We're coming across that radial, and then we're going to re-intercept it from the other side. So we'll start to bring up our flaps. Up they come. Put ourselves in heading select for the moment. Put on the autopilot. Pull back our props now. And engage IAS mode, turn off our auxes and our auto feather, and let's start to turn ourselves towards an intercept heading to join the radial. So what we do is we spin our heading bug around and we put our heading bug more or less right there so that it is pointing at the nose of the deviated CDI. And then as it gets closer and closer and closer, we will narrow that angle until it comes in. Or what we can do, what we'll probably do, is we will simply engage our nav lock. Now you see right now we are parallel to the radial, to the 070 radial, and we're parallel therefore to the airway that follows that radial. So climbing very nicely, and you'll see in a second, because we won't have to fly far, that needle will start to come in and I will hit nav as soon as that needle starts to move, and it will intercept it and then it will fly it. I'm not futzing around with my lights being above 10,000 right now because the more important thing is joining this radial, and it would also be talking to ATC. The fact that the lights are on at 10,000 does not make a dime's worth of difference. So we're going to wait until we intercept. So we're right over it right now. And I hope this isn't one of those occasions where I've gotten my my directions misconstrued. Probably not. We're going to fly over this, and in a second we're going to see that needle again, and we're going to see the little triangle pointing away from the station. One hopes. There. And we've blown through it, so we'll re-intercept from this side. And you see how the triangle is pointing away? However, our CDI is, I believe, correctly deviated, which means as soon as we turn this way, we will come back in and re-intercept it. The switchover came at an awkward point. It helps that we're roughly flying about 40 degrees. There we go. Our heading is roughly 40 degrees away from our desired track, and that's another way of, confirming that we're in the right position with respect to that. So I hit nav right up here, and now it is intercepting it, and we're going to join that outbound. Now, we're going to fly this for about 80 miles or so, maybe a little bit more. And this is a high altitude VOR, and we're going to be flying at a high altitude, so we're going to have the best chance of receiving it for a long distance. This particular VOR is meant to be received as much as 110 miles out. And you see we are somewhat deviated with respect to the track, and that is because we have a crosswind giving us a little shove here, which is why our heading is this way, but our track is this way. And that's all perfectly fine. What I'll do is I will briefly put 114.7 in our VOR2, so you can see our RMI needle will point right back at the station. It points it at whichever way the station is. And we'll just also rejoice that we've been cleared up to flight level 270. And we'll also change to standard altimeter right now. And we pop up our ARC-DO, put this in nav2, and now you see the green needle is pointing, the head of it is pointing directly at our tail because the station is back there. And that matches with the fact that our to from indicator is pointing from. So that's another way to check things. And this is our DME. And if we look at our chart here, getting rid of Denver. Don't ever want to see that again. No, I kid. It's an amazing airport, but wow. All right, so we'll look here and we'll see that there's Hayes Center 1177, and we're flying 070 out of here, and we're not checking ourselves with respect to any magenta line. We're just doing it. And when we get, see how long this segment is. CJ60 to HCT is 173 miles. So, see there, it says 173 miles. That's the segment length. It looks to me, and maybe I'm wrong, that our changeover point is actually 55 miles out from Hayes Center and not equidistant, which would suggest that this is a very powerful VOR and this one less so, but I'm not sure about that, and I'm never really good at reading these charts. So before we go any further, let's just check, make sure our climb is still nicely established and that we are still on this radial, and we are. And then we'll go back to getting our nose in the clouds or in the maps. Let's see. There's Denver, and there is Hayes Center. And on the low altitude charts, they have in the middle of the airway an intermediate VOR, which suggests to me that at those altitudes you don't get the full distance out of this. So I think, as my esteemed colleague Rich, otherwise known as Flight Sim 481, would say, and he would speak with some real knowledge of this, well then, let's see how we get on. So we'll just see how we get on. We are climbing laboriously here over some really superior, beautiful clouds. Just magnificent. Check our frame rates. Yeah, they're all over the place, anywhere from 59 to 29, and that's because as these clouds get rendered, they get rendered on the GPU, and they need to get rendered more than once so that you can get the lighting and the transparency effects on them. And depending on your anti-aliasing, some of these things, I believe including clouds, can get rendered as many as 4 times, 4 passes to display on the screen. So anything you need done actually is 4 times as labor intensive. And bear in mind, we are also flying in 4K. So it's close enough for rock and roll right now, but, you know, as you saw coming into Denver, it can put a little strain on things. So, of course, in my lotto winning, tax refund getting, bonus making, raise scoring, find $20 on the subway kind of head, I'm already kind of talking myself into a second 980 Ti. And I'm ignoring the little voice in my head that says you haven't gotten a tax refund back yet. You might not get a bonus at work. You might not get a raise. And you haven't even found 20 bucks on the subway or even in the cushions of your sofa or the pocket of that winter coat that you haven't put on yet. So, you know, we might have a few miles to go before we sleep, as they say. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cook up some fixes here so we can kind of check our progress without resorting to GPS. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tune in Akron and see where we are with respect to it. The needle should probably point ever so slightly off to the left, and we should be at this point, oh, I don't know, about I'd say about 30-40 miles away from it, and that will be one way of telling us that we're laterally on this line right here and we're the right distance. So let's see, Akron is 114.4. You can do this with fixes too. Like for instance, what we could do is we could tune in Thurman and tune in the 297 radial and see whether we've crossed it. Actually, let's do that and see whether the needle is pointing at 290, not 297, that would be 117. And see how that squares up with where we are. If it is pointing ahead of us to something like 092, it means we're still back here, and if it's pointing, say, down to 188, it means we're already over here. So let's take a look using the 297 radial as our little x-ray. So we'll put into nav 2 112.9. This is in essence called getting a fix. It's using two stations to establish a point in space. So what did we say it was? We said it was 112.9. So let's just switch this. 112.9. And we will observe which way that needle points. Okay, that needle is now pointing at 125. And if it's pointing at 125, it means we're right about there. So if we draw a line through there, let's see, 092. And that is... that's 180. Okay, so that's 180. And that is 092, so that is... let's see exactly. 130. So 130 corresponds to 290. I'm sorry, to 210. No. 130 corresponds to 310. So we're right about there. Shoot through here. So we're right here. And as a cross check, let's just measure our mileage to here. And drop a point right here, which is where we should be. So we should be about 25 miles from Akron. And so we'll tune Akron in here, 114.4. See how labor intensive this can become? I'm sure I'm doing this a little bit too laboriously, but 114.4, and now we look at our DME, and we've traveled a little bit, so we're 17 miles away from Akron, which puts us on the V70 right about there. Alright, so that sort of was a quick and dirty way to locate yourself using a fix. And we're coming up on our cruising altitude. Bring our props back to max cruise. And let's get our navigation radio stuff set up right now again. So 114.7 is going to be, that is still Denver, and we're now 55 from Denver. And 117.7 is going to be Hayes Center, and I will bet you we can't get it yet, but let's find out. Wow, we can. Okay, so 116 miles away. We'll wait till we're 90, and then we will start to head towards that. And we'll be tracking in to Hayes Center on the 069. Now you might wonder why it's not the 070, and I suspect, and I'm not sure if I'm right, that just has to do with minor radio and magnetic anomalies that are local to that particular station, and so it's a built-in little correction for that. And you can see now that we have our RMI, which is tuned into nav2, pointing straight at Hayes Center. And it's actually pointing right at the magenta triangle, which is where you want to put the head of this so that we are tracking to the station, and that will correct for our wind, which is a little bit from the left and behind. You see? There's our heading. That's our track. That's where we want to put our needle. If we put our needle right here, we will track the wrong radial. In so many words. Now, in a second, we will not be needing, when we switch over, I'm going to switch over Hayes Center to our nav1, and then we'll put our next frequency in standby for nav2. So Hayes Center, and we're going from Hayes Center to Pawnee City, which is 112.4. And on we'll go through this stack. So we will always have two VORs, or the VOR and the runway localizer showing. Alright, let us flip over. So now watch what happens. We'll do this flip, and now it's going to turn us to what it thinks is the 070 radial, so I just adjusted it to 069, and we will grab that. And what you'll see is, as we intercept this, the RMI, which is pointing to the station as well, see we're now coming around to get the next radial over. As soon as we intercept, this green needle will go back to being on the point here, only that point will be under this right here. at the 069. And we could do this with heading mode as well, but we're just going to intercept like this. And you notice nothing happens drastically here because we are that far out. Alright, so we're equidistant between the two, and I'm going to flip our nav2 actually over to our next. No, you know what? I'm going to keep it for a little while. And let's just very briefly put 114.7 back in here so we can track away from it just briefly and see when it croaks on us. So 114.7. Now you see this is pointing back towards Denver where we were, and our DM is climbing. And we're slowly intercepting, and you notice that our to from indicator is now pointing to. And there's 60 and there's 69 right there. And as we turn onto it, this index is going to come right around to there. Just retrim slightly here. Check that our fuel flow is all normal, and it most assuredly is. We can, if we want, let people get up, go to the lavatory, do what they do best. And now we'll turn off our lights, which we neglected a moment ago. And we will make note of the fact that we've encountered no icing, and probably won't unless there's some very high clouds coming up to meet us. And again, we're working our way onto this radial. And you'll also notice that this magenta tick is getting closer to the top of the blue needle here as we get closer and closer to that track. Now when haze flips, that's 117.7, we will go to 112.4, and we're going to go direct in this case. I'll show you how to go direct in a second. And then for our approach, we are going to fly, I believe, 301 out of here. And we've got some storms here. Light to moderate convective activity. Could be interesting. Okay, what did we say? 112.4. So from 117.7 to 112.4. Back up to our arc dues. 112.4. I'm just going to try tuning this in here. I don't think we're going to be able to see it yet, but that's okay. It'll declutter this. And we're 75 miles away from Hayes Center. So in essence, we're going to use our nav2 to bird dog our VOR as we're using our nav1, bird dog our next VOR with the green needle, as we're using the blue needles right here, our HSI, to come off of nav1. I'm looking at why our heading is pretty heftily deviated, as you can see. 080 is we're deviated 11 degrees. In part, that is because we're still flying a little bit outbound to a little wide to intercept this. And if we really wanted to speed things along, we could do this. We could pop into heading select mode, and watch what I'm going to do. I'm just going to hasten that a little bit. So we will turn to the right. And wait for this to come in. And then turn to 069 when it does. So we're just hurrying the process along here. And we're half a needle width away, so we'll start our turn ever so gently. And we'll go back into nav mode. And now, as you see, our needle is centered up and it's almost dead bang on the magenta index. And our heading is still ever so slightly to the right, so 078. So that's 9 degrees to the right, and the reason is this crosswind right here. In the olden days, you would find a landmark or a beacon, and you would fly a heading, and you would note which way you were drifting, and then you would, on the fly, as it were, build in some drift correction. You'd cock yourself off this way or that way, and you would just dead reckon your way onto a reasonably good track, surprisingly good track you could do. He says, like Yoda. Like Yoda, he says. Alright, so we're looking for Pawnee Valley to start picking up. We're watching ourselves come in down the 069 into Hayes Center. And when we get out of Hayes Center, we're going to make a little right turn to 081, and that will line us up nicely to come in on more or less the 270 radial into Pawnee City, so we'll aim for that. I'll show you how to go direct to using the course indicator, but we'll just for hygiene, I suppose, and just because it's neat, we'll aim to come in on the 270 radial inbound. Actually, let's look at our star. Pawnee City 031. You see I said 301, 031. So what we'll do is when we get to Pawnee City here, we're going to be flying 090, and we'll just make a 59 degree turn to 031 and thus begin our star. Check our altitudes too. Okay. St. Joseph, where's the Pawnee transition? Does not say. Very nice. There doesn't seem to be a restriction. Non-turbojets, expect 10,000. Alright, well, that's reasonable enough. So we will plan to descend to Pawnee City, 17,000 feet. And we will not be using VNAV. We will be using our tiny little brain cells. Just refresh ourselves what we're going to be doing when we get to Hayes Center is we'll be flying the 090, which means we're going to be turning very slightly to the right here. So we'll first get into heading mode, and then we will fly in on the 090 into the city of the Pawnee. And we'll also plan our descent so I think it's about 60 miles, and if we do 60 miles at 300 feet per mile, we can get down to 10,000 feet easy from flight level 270, so maybe we'll do that. In the meantime, we are waiting for Pawnee City to come alive. We can continue to fly past Hayes Center. We'll simply fly a heading, and we will fly a direct from, so I'll show you how to set up a direct from. And we'll set that up corresponding to the heading we want to turn to. That will take us into the vicinity of Pawnee City. Again, we'll keep our eye on our weather. As a matter of fact, while we still have a moment or two, let's check the weather in Omaha. The weather in Omaha sucks. Not much wind, however. Visibility 3 miles, broken at 1900, which is 1,000 feet above field elevation. Light rain, thunderstorms in the vicinity. Ugly, kids, ugly. And again, we're going to fly a procedure that is all old-fashioned. And with any luck, we'll try and do it right. Was that 2978 was the altimeter? Yes, so we'll set that in our standby. Like so. Check our fuel flow. We're fine. We have enough gas in the tanks to divert to many places, so not strictly a concern. The sound you hear there is me getting myself a couple aspirin because earlier tonight went to the office Christmas party. Also, I think my jaw is a little bit sore from hanging open today, walking around in 65-degree weather in the second week of December here in New York. So any way you look at it, it's wild stuff. Alright, we'll preset a heading right here. We're not there yet, but we'll get close. And our heading is 081. Slight little turn, that's all. flying to the east-northeast right now. But in a second, well, we'll still be flying to the east-northeast, just less so. So when this flips, we will go into heading select mode. We'll make our turn. We will see if we can pick up Pawnee City, and if we can't, we'll track outbound on this more or less direct. What that'll do is it will give us a track that in essence is immune to the wind, that we can follow without worrying about drifting because we're in just a heading mode with no nothing to keep us honest. Okay, so we're getting on the flip right there. Just wait for it to turn around, and then we'll make our right turn and head outbound on it. And I'll show you how to, in essence, do a direct from. It's just a direct to, only backwards. What we will not do yet is put us in a heading mode. We're still flying wings level. It's smart enough to keep flying us this way, even though we're in a sort of zone of confusion when it comes to this. Just wait for it to flip over. Remember, this 4.3 miles also includes the distance down from what's in essence 5 miles up. Includes slant distance. So it's not quite the same as flying to a GPS waypoint, where that is exactly what it is. So we're just waiting for this to come alive again, and we're also hoping that Pawnee City comes in, but okay, there. So now we're going backwards, and we will turn to 081. Go into heading select mode there, and we're actually there already. So now we'll go back into nav mode. We'll set our course, our nav course, to 081. And we will track outbound on that. Until Pawnee City comes alive. When Pawnee City does come alive, we're going to be tracking on the 090. I see how it's intercepting us. It just sort of skipped us out a little ways around that perimeter, around that fan of radials, until it got us on the, right now it says 075. Actually want to be on the 081. And again, we're waiting for Pawnee City. If not, we will continue to fly on this radial right here until we're within range of Pawnee City. And this segment is quite a distance, so we're probably going to have to follow this for a little while. Now, one other thing I'm going to do to get us fixed again is I'm going to tune in McCook here at 115.3, and I'm going to look in our RMI for it to be pointing back at 067. If it is, or 067 would be 247. And if it's pointing back at less than 247, it means we're somewhere over here, and if it's more than 247, then we're somewhere out here. So I'm looking for 247, and that'll mean we're right at this point, at this point along the way, and that'll give us some idea of where we are. So that's what, 1053? Yes, 1153. Did I say 105? I'm sorry. So we'll put 1153 in our nav2 temporarily, and we'll look at where the needle points, and the needle points to 210. Let's just watch it move here. So we're flying this way, and the station is back that way. So 210 is at the moment 25. Okay, there's 270, and there's 360, 270, 2829. 300, 310, 320, 330, 340. Our gauges again. Our gauge is at 210, so we are right about yada 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 yada, right about there. So we're right about here. Alright, cool. So when this sucker gets to 247, we'll be right here. And no, I'm sorry, we'll be right here. So we'll watch this come along as we move past it. And we continue to track away on the 081 radial out of Hayes Center. And in a second I'll switch back to Pawnee City here. See how this is increasing, increasing, increasing as the station trails further and further behind us, and we go away at less of a angle from it as it starts to just trail completely behind us here. And I'm sure if you knew trigonometry or something, you could measure how many minutes and seconds it takes to go, say, 10 degrees, and you could figure out our angular velocity with respect to the station. You could plot it out on a triangle, and therefore you could predict where we are and how fast we're moving. And in essence, doing that, which you can't really crunch in your head, is what RNAV does. It takes a couple fixes, a couple radios, and uses them to build triangles such as this. here and here and here, and use that to figure out where the heck you are. And double check here. That Pawnee City is 112.4. Checking our arc due, 112.4. Just briefly see if we're picking it up yet. Nope, not yet. And away we go on this. Our final sanity check is we're flying ever so slightly northeast, and that's what we should be doing. So if all else fails, we've got a heading that we're flying. Isn't GPS great? Honestly, isn't it wonderful? I cannot begin to tell you how convenient it is. But again, we're doing this without a magenta line in the sky, which is fine. In the olden days, you didn't have VORs. You simply had a non-directional beacon or a radio station, a local radio station. And before that, you had a whole network of lights on towers that were set up and funded by the Postal Service, funded by the U.S. government. And you would fly between those lights. And one of the first to do that was Charles Lindbergh, who actually pioneered the route. So if it ever comes down to that, we have to do that, we will be in very good company indeed, I suppose. Alright, so there we're at about 249, which means that we should be right about there, which means we're still going to be out of range a bit of Pawnee City, and I believe this is a high altitude VOR, so that's good. Nope, can't pick it up yet. Okay. Alright, just loafing along here. We're still within range of Hayes Center, which we passed 78 miles ago. And we should be within range of it for another 30 miles guaranteed, which should be more than enough to get us in range of our next VOR. Because they don't build routes using VORs as waypoints without making sure that you can get from one to the other with nothing in between. just replying to somebody right now who commented on one of our around the world flights, who is answering a suggestion I had, a call I had for destinations. And he suggests that when I hit Shannon, after that we go to Southampton, which sounds like a great idea because it's Orbix, England, and it's an Orbix, England airport, and it's a nice size strip, and there are a lot of dashes that go in and out of it, and that sounds just about perfect. And it'll make a nice jumping off point for the continent, so I think I'm going to do that. Sounds good. I'm writing. I like Southampton Airport. It's got this neat ramp that's made out of paving stones, yellow paving stones. Pretty cool. And it's away from a bit of the London craziness, and it's out of that traffic. And it's just, it's a nice, interesting city with landmarks to fly into. Conversely, when it gets foggy, it is really foggy to fly into, and that'll be good too. So either way, the Mighty Dash wins. And either way, the Mighty Dash's custodian and occasional pilot gets a little learning experience out of it, has a little fun. Can't really beat that. What I will do is I will again check and see whether we can pick up Pawnee City, and we can, and there it is. So let's go direct to Pawnee City. Not direct to exactly, but we'll go. First, let's fly a heading right now. And it's doing that because I've got my heading bug not squared up, so let me square it up. We're flying exactly due east, and we actually want to fly a 090 into Pawnee City, so let's evaluate here. The way you fly it direct is you look at your CDI here, and then you let me just make sure that's Pawnee City. 112.4, okay, it is. And you turn your course selector until it centers right there. And that is direct to. See, it's 096, but what we really want to do is we want to intercept the 090 radial. And you see that that is deviated with respect to it. We're a little bit to the left of it. So what we shall do is we shall turn ourselves heading wise so that our heading bug is right on the tip of our CDI, and as the CDI gets closer we will square up the heading bug until finally this and our track will coincide. And it shouldn't take very long because we're going to make a fairly steep turn with respect to the station, which as you can see is 112 nautical miles out, so we're right on the hairy edge of it. And here it's going to start to come in any second now because we're really not that far deviated, we're not that far off track. Come wings level, and you see how the lub line here is lined up exactly with the tip of the CDI pointer. And again, as this gets closer, we'll move the heading bug this way and this way and this way and this way until, as if by magic, we're there. The station, by the way, is right here. So when this starts to move, if we were to simply turn our heading almost dead onto here, we would get it almost right. But let's just do it the formal way. And again, we're in heading select mode. And when the time comes, we will start to ride that sucker in. And when we are about 60 miles out, we'll start our descent. We'll start a 300 foot per mile 3-degree descent. And we'll do it the old-fashioned way. So the 2 needle is correct. And see how it's starting to creep in here? Just let it move a little bit. When it's about 1 needle width away, I'll start to bring the heading bug in slightly. I mean, we can do this. We'll just intercept it so gradually you'll barely notice it. And I'm just adjusting our heading bug so that it stays current with the tip of the needle. Actually adjusting it so that our lub line here, the white bar, stays aligned with respect to that. Again, we'll be looking for 60 miles here, and the other thing we'll do is tune in our next VOR, which is going to be Omaha. And we'll brief our star, and I just spun the wrong bug around. Make sure we're back in altitude hold, and we are. See how our deviation is narrowing. And we are slowly turning our way back towards 90 degrees. And you intercept a localizer the same way, only you're closer, and so the needle moves quicker. My only significant handicap is that I really am bad at adding and subtracting 180 degrees. Now, one reason also it's taking so long for us to intercept is because we've got a 73 knot crosswind. So instead of putting this right here, instead I'm going to give us actually a little bit more heading here, turn us a little more to the right, because otherwise it's going to be hours before we intercept this. See, as we're trying to intercept it by flying to the southwest, the wind is blowing us back. Okay, we're coming up on 80 nautical miles away, and we need to come down 17,000 feet. At 80, we can come down 24,000 feet, so we're in very good shape. And again, this wind is why we're working very, very hard to intercept this track, or to join the inbound radial, as it were. Every time we think we are in, it pushes us back out. And I should have thought of that when we were intercepting earlier. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to let this thing deviate slightly past us and then turn us to 090 and then let the drift push us back on track. Try and outsmart it. But that's quite a wind when you consider that we're flying this way to intercept this and it is moving so slowly. Because here's the plane. Here is the radial. We're cutting into the radial, and at the same time the wind is pushing us that way. So as we go this way, we actually end up here and here and here, and we have to travel farther and farther and farther to intercept. Alright, we'll turn us, and probably by the time we turn we will have blown through it just a bit, which is good. Yep, you see we've blown through it very, very slightly. Not a whole lot. And with that done, we can put ourselves into nav hold mode again. See, it says VOR instead of ILS or localizer. And let's find our next VOR, which is Omaha 116.3. So again, we'll put 116.3 in our nav2. And it is alive, and it is pointing this way. When it starts to point about this way, or actually let's do this, when it starts to point about this way, that's when we're going to make our turn. We're going to come in on the 031 radial. And let us also get our localizer ready, 110.3. Okay, we'll put that as the standby for nav2, and we are done with 117.7, I do believe. Unless that is Omaha. Oh, Omaha's 116.3. So that's there. So yes, let's put in our localizer there. 110.3. What is 113.3? 112.4, 116.3, 110.3 this should be. Okay. And that's going to be our localizer. Again, we're going to fly the full ILS approach, which includes a procedure turn. star is going to, when we get there, we will tune in 116.3. We'll fly the 031 radial out of here, and we'll fly it till we hit the 300 radial, which should be at 17 DME. We'll turn this way, and then we'll turn towards the field, and we will fly outbound. And let us start our descent now. Slow ourselves down. All that talking. Start our descent, and we want to be down to 10,000. Outsell. Steepen that quite a bit. Roll off our power. Check our weather again in Omaha because it's probably deteriorating. Two 978. We're still okay. We will retrim a little bit. Now, at Pawnee City, we will turn left to 031, and we will track outbound on the 031 here till we get to this intersection, which is 17 DME before Omaha at 116.3. And that is the 120 radial. So let's make sure we've got 116.3 where we can use it. It is here. Oh, I've got our ADF here too. 112.4. 116.3. So in essence what we're going to do is we're going to fly on the 031 radial departing here, and then we'll fly that until this green needle points to 030. And this needle points to 120. No, that doesn't make any sense at all. 300 and 120, so till this needle points right here to 300, and this points, the back of it points to 120. You see what I mean? Cockamamie. No damn good. Alright, we've got 25 miles till Pawnee, and we've got a little bit more to come down than we have room for, so let's bring ourselves to flight idle and increase our rate of descent. And that little chirping is because my damn SciTech levers make noise, and we're right at the very bottom of the range, and they're popping them into beta like that, just randomly. So we'll be getting to here, and we'll be making a left turn. 2031. And I've lost an engine. Thank you, SciTech. Thank you so much. Let's see if I can get it back. I think I have. See, when my throttle, my power levers bounce around like that, the engines don't like it, as you might understand. Alright, so we're tuned to Pawnee City here still. And we're on the 090 radial inbound. Or 270 radial inbound. When we hit the flip, we will turn left to 031. Let's just get that set, because we're getting close. And then we will fly the 031 radial until we get to this needle pointing to here, which should coincide with about 17 miles right down here. And let us set our altimeter local 2978. Done and done. Again, we're looking for that flip in 8 miles. Let's just program the HUD very quickly. Field elevation 9502 and 985. 9502 and 985. Good. 9502 and 985. And we made our target. Feed in just a little power. Okay, so we'll set our HUD to 9502 and elevation 985. Enter. Alright, that is done. We're now holding at 10,000, and that is good. We're at a nice, decent speed. Turn on our pumps. We're getting ready to make our turn. Bleeds to min. Fasten seatbelt signs on. Lights can come on. Ready to go. Okay, so again, we're going to fly now. We just hit the flip, so we'll go into heading select mode. As soon as we can see this again, we'll get ourselves onto the 031 radial. And then we will fly it until this hits right at our turbulence penetration speed. That's good. Until this needle hits 300. Okay, so we'll set our course to 031 radial, and we will turn into it by tweaking our heading just a little bit. And notice how it comes in a lot quicker now because we're closer to the station. And we're looking for this to hit 300, at which point the DME here for number 2 will say 17, give or take. And then, once it does, we will turn left to 300 and fly direct Omaha, and then we'll start our approach. And hello again. We've picked up the tape and are cutting it. We cut it where we did because immediately thereafter I proceeded to botch the arrival into Omaha. Now, I didn't botch it to the extent that we lost any lives or that we failed to grease the mighty dash onto runway 14 right, because to tell you the truth, we greased the mighty dash onto 14 right. But let me show you what I did wrong as we're navigating here entirely by VOR and not using the GMS or G. Let's try that again. Not using the GPS or FMS at all. Let me show you exactly what I did wrong. What we were doing is we were working the following arrival into Omaha, and we were flying the Marwe 1 arrival, and everything's fine, and we were on the 031 radial out of Pawnee City, which, as you can see right here, we happen to be on. And as I do that, let me just get our gauges set up nicely again because I had to reset the situation. Make it so that we can just pop up our gauges right here and have a nice little convenient display that doesn't block the rest of the screen. Anyway, so we were working the Marwe 1 and flying inbound to Omaha, at which point we were going to turn 300 degrees, turn to heading 300 degrees, and fly outbound along essentially the localizer to runway 14. What happened was the following. The arrival is to fly here, which is 17 miles out, turn to 300, track inbound to Omaha, and then turn and fly outbound on the ILS right here to Omaha at 341, which would be the reciprocal of that, and that is about 31 something. And we were to fly from Omaha right here 15.99 miles to here, which is Zatar, and at which point we would descend, and then we would do a procedure turn and then come around here and re-intercept and fly back inbound. And what I didn't realize at the time is that the ILS here does not have a DME. It is relying on Omaha for its distance information. So I flew out to here, got rid of the Omaha frequency, flipped over to 110.3 on both sides, and flew outbound. And then I looked down and I said, well, wait a minute. I've got no DME, so what am I going to do? And what I ended up doing is, right now, before I do anything, you can see right here, my engines are going crazy. And that is because I hate this. It's because my SciTech throttle quadrants are funky. So the way around that is to bring our power back to idle, bring our condition levers up to full, and then setting our power to max cruise, seeing if that sets them to end top, and it does. Then bringing our props back to max climb, then max cruise, and seeing if they come down. And they don't, which means I'm going to have to bring my number 2 engine down to start and feather and restart it. Bring number 1 up to full. God, I hate this. It's because my SciTech throttles send glitches, and then the simulator goes crazy, and it interprets it as a problem with our prop controller, or it manifests it as that. So up we come, and we'll get to the explanation in a minute. Turn our start selector to number 2 as soon as we power off. There we go. And select it and come back downstairs and move this to start feather. And you see how it jumps around like that? Oh, I frickin' hate that. Hang on. Drag this with the mouse. And let's see if we get a solid start here, despite all that crap. Wait till it comes to 210 on the props. And when it does, we'll move our props up to max. What a pain in the ass. Anyway, as we wait for that, let's just check to make sure we're flying straight and level, and we are, more or less. Just retrim to cover the fact that now we're only producing power from our number 1 engine. This, of course, being the mighty Dash, it is mighty enough to handle it, but nonetheless. Alright. We'll bring our props up to max, and let's just see if that fixes the problem. And here they come. And that should go up to 1020. And it looks like it is. And what we'll do... I really have to get new throttles, because this is making flying very miserable. And we'll bring the props back to max climb, and then max cruise. And they're at 850 now. And we'll bring our power levers up, and there we are. Alright, now that that's done, let me just pause the sim again and show you where I screwed up. So what happened was, we flew to Omaha, we made our left turn, and we got over the field, and we were tuned into Omaha, the localizer for it, for 14 right. And the first thing I did was I looked down and said, oh my God, there's no DME. But it says I have to fly 22.1 miles out. What am I going to do? And so, of course, I got way too smart for myself, and I figured, oh, well, you know, of course. I'll time it. So I'm going 3 miles a minute, so that's 22 miles, so let's fly 7 minutes outbound. So I flew 7 miles outbound, and I realized, oh my God, we are way the hell away. And that is because I didn't realize that we were using this for our distance information, which really meant that when we flew to Zatar, we actually only had to fly 6.2 miles beyond that. So I'm just redoing it just in the name of proper procedure. We flew a decent approach, and we landed the plane safely, but I figure you want to see it done right. So without further ado, we're flying inbound to Omaha right now on the 031, so let's just get going there. Having fixed our propeller problem, which really isn't a sim problem, which is really, when it comes right down to it, a SciTech crappy throttle problem. So we've got our ILS set up, and now because I'm going to have to use this DME information at least until we make the procedure turn, we are going to stay tuned in on nav2 to Omaha, even though in order to get our HUD working right, we really have to have nav 1 and 2 both on 110.3. So we're just going to wait till we do the procedure turn. And just checking we can hit Omaha at 10,000. Actually, we can hit it lower than this because this is the MSA in the whole area. So let's hit it at 7,000, and we'll come down to 6,000 at Zatar, and then we will fly outbound another 6 miles from there. We'll do our procedure turn, and we'll come down to 2,900. And let's just check our weather in Omaha. It is 29:48 for the altimeter, so we'll set that right now because we're close enough. And the weather there is relatively crappy, but the winds are favorable enough. So there's 29:48. We're below 10, so we will come down to 200 knots. I mean 250 knots. We'll just retrim now because we're no longer one engine. We could climb on one engine. We can certainly fly level on one engine, and we can certainly land on one engine, so that's not really a problem. We're to keep our eye out for icing as well, and let's turn our pumps and auxes on and get ourselves in a landing frame of mind. Turn our lights on, logo lights on, and we're good to go there. And again, as you see, we are not flying on the FMS, and there's no map, so we're just basically going the way we're going. And just as a refresher, we're going to make our turn when we're about 17 miles away from here if we've navigated properly. And when this needle here, which is pointing to Omaha, is at about 300. So as we're going this way, the station obviously stays in the same place, and with respect to us, it'll move to here, to here, to here, to here, to here, until finally here, and then we'll turn into it. At which point in Nav 1, we will turn it over to 110.3, and we'll track that outbound. And while I'm at it, let me just set our correct course inbound for it, which is 141. And as you can see, 141 is that way, and we're going to cut across it, and again we're going to turn that way. And the thing about an HSI is that it presents it basically with respect to the airplane, so we're going to end up going out that way and then turning that way and then re-intercepting it this way. I will get our weather. Try to get our weather. Well, we'll just have to rely on this. So 29:48, and wind is going to come just a little bit from our left. There'll be a crosswind. And I am right now, I'm on heading hold, and that is because I've set my course to a course for the next frequency, and obviously we don't want it on the next frequency. We want to stay on this frequency. So when we turn, I'll reset our course. And the airplane saw that, and it popped us into heading hold mode, figuring it didn't want us to do anything drastic, and it was right. But what I will do is I will shallow our course out a little bit, turn it a little bit to the right, because in my experience flying this approach, we end up being slightly inside the 17-mile DME, which is where we need to be. And as we do that, let's come down to 7,000 feet. So bring our altitude down to 7, outcell, vertical speed, and down. And I'll roll back our power a bit. We'll come down at about 3 degrees. Retrim the rudder. And you see the power levers here just sort of jittering around. That is because of the crappy pots or potentiometers that SciTech uses in its crappy, lousy, shitty, cheap throttle quadrants. So after you use it for a little while, the pots, which are basically just rotary resistors, get dirty, they get noisy, and they start sending spikes. And that is exactly what that is. Okay, so we're at about a 17-mile arc here. And I suspect when this gets to about 30, we'll be close to 17 miles. And I'm on outcell, so we're not going to come lower than that. And we're descending at a nice clip, which is fine. And our standby will be 116.3, and that is for Omaha. And we'll flip that over, and we'll turn to heading 300, and we'll fly that. And once again, this is giving us trouble here on our navigation, and that's really because we're right over the station. And so we will start our turn right now to 300. Pop us in heading select, and around we come. And as we do, we will fly, so this needle is right here, right under the magenta index. And we'll retrim our rudder a little bit, and we'll switch our nav 1 over to 10.3, and now we can switch our course to 141. And that will show us the ILS, and we'll track outbound from that. Feed in a little power now that we're leveled off. We'll set that to 141, and you'll notice we're going to re-intercept this, and we'll use our heading bug to capture it. And then we're going to fly outbound. First we're going to fly inbound to Omaha, and then we will turn onto this, and we'll fly another, I want to say 5.9 miles, but let me double check our plate. We will fly 15.9 miles, sorry, outbound. So we're going to wait for this to come in. We're going to wait for this to go to 0. With any luck, it'll happen at almost the same time. And as you can see, we are mostly in the soup. And let me turn our bus tie off because we restarted our engine. Our bleeds are on min, our lights are on. Alright, good, 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 good. Just going to turn us very slightly to get us towards the Omaha station. And we're 8 miles away, and in probably about 5 miles or so you'll start to see this move, and then we will intercept this going outbound. So from here we would fly 22 miles. Let's see, 16 to Zatar, and then 22 to get to our procedure turn, which just basically reverses course. Set our V speeds, and from experience I'm going to fly an extra 6 miles an hour or so, 6 knots. There we go. Our speed's okay where it is. Our next altitude is going to be 6,000 or below. Set that. All right, there's our localizer, so let's turn towards it. And remember, we're going backwards on the localizer, so the more we turn this way, the more this will come this way. And now we're going to fly outbound for 15.9 miles, at which point we can descend, and then another 6 miles, and after that we can do our procedure turn. And you can see Omaha's shifting to be behind us. And let's just intercept. The way you fly an intercept is you turn your heading bug until you are over the CDI, and as it comes in you narrow your heading. And we're getting bounced around a little bit, and here comes our localizer, and we're now 2.8 miles from Omaha and flying outbound. And you can see the green needle is shifting to ever that much more behind us. Now when we get to 15.9 we'll start to descend again, and you notice the localizer is starting to come back in. So we're going to chase it in the opposite direction just a little bit. Keep it from deviating too much. Let it come back to us. Okay, there's 5.5. Again, we're looking for 15.9. Blew through it just a little bit, so we'll come back to it. And even though we're not looking at a map, you can see we've got a significant crosswind that is blowing us around the joint. Okay, here comes our localizer again, and I'm afraid we're going to zip through it once more. And that is just a function of the wind. Alright, there's 8.9, and we're looking for 15.9 again. And we're right over the airport right now, that's why this blanked out. And again, there's no DME coming from the airport. Okay, we're right at 200 knots, which is where we want to be. Just going to fly this heading for a second, and in a second or two we will see this come back. That was the inner marker. We're literally over the threshold of the runway there. In a second we'll get that back. Put in 1 notch of flaps just so we can stay at a nice pitch. There it is. And let's see if we can keep it from drifting too much more. Keep it 1 dot deviated, and let's bring it back. Here we come. Looking good. Bring it back in. You see how we're making ever so small movements now? Trying to keep it within that 1 dot range. And again, we're looking for 15.9, at which point we'll hit vertical speed and we'll come down to 6,000. But we are getting blown around and rocked around quite a bit, as you can see. Okay. We're sort of bracketing here, narrowing our bracket. Coming up on 15.9, and our deviations are getting smaller. Just barely a half a diamond away. And there's 15.9, so we hit VS, vertical speed. Start to come down. Pull off our power. And bring in our deviation, and we're above the glide slope for the moment, but we won't be for long. Remember, we've got a notch of flaps in, so we're going to have to stay off the power a bit. Just going to bring that localizer back. And we are going to turn when we get to 22 miles away to 086, and we're going to fly that for 1 minute, and then we're going to turn 180 degrees. Just bringing that diamond in a little bit at a time. Okay, we're at 6,000. Feed the power back in. Just overshot it a little, but not too much. There's 20.5. A little bit more to the right. We're just correcting for the wind drift now. Keeping that needle from deviating much more. That's this diamond right here, so I'm just going to make our heading a little more to the right. Remember, everything we do has to be reversed because we're flying backwards along this. And there is 21, and we're going to go to 22.1. And now we are going to turn to 006. And we're going to start our clock, and we're going to fly that for 1 minute. And you see this is deviating away, which is fine. And we can come down to 2,900. So we'll spin our altitude bug down. Hit alt cell, go to vertical speed. Spin us down, and we're coming up on a minute here. And as you can see, we are above the glide slope, but we won't be for long. I'm just going to drop the gear, give us a little more drag. And almost as if by magic, I'm just going to fly this outbound just a second or two longer, and now we're going to spin it back to 186, which is the reciprocal, and that'll put us on an intercept heading to intercept the localizer again. Now what I'm going to do at this point, since I'm done with the DME and I want the guidance from the HUD, I'm now switching our nav1 and nav2 to the localizer frequency. And here we come. We're going to end up going this way, and we're going to have our CDI right under our heading bug, which is going to help us intercept the localizer. And we are still above the glide slope, so we're good. I'm going to shallow out our descent so we're not too low, because we are far out actually. This approach actually gives us plenty of time to get ready, which is what baffled me the last time around. Now we're going to blow through. We're going to blow through the localizer slightly, and we'll have to re-intercept it from the other side. So I'm just going to pop this over here. And that's because this airplane doesn't turn unbelievably fast. And And we're still below the glide slope, which is good. And we're still a ways away. Our gear is down. Our props are configured, our lights are on. We're at the right speed. And now we are just going to intercept our localizer. And again, I'm setting up a heading, so I'm cutting across to where the CDI is deviated to. I'll put ourselves in nav so we can grab the localizer, and it will. And I'm going to set our heading to 141. And I'm going to wait for the glide slope to manifest itself, at which point I'll pop ourselves into nav mode. Put in one more notch of flaps. And we are still coming down. At 172 I can pop in our final notch of flaps, but we're far enough out at the moment that you know, I don't want to drag this out too long. And we've set our runway elevation and our heading and our length and all that properly, which means that our let's put out our last notch of flaps here, which means that our HUD should work fine. And here comes the localizer. And because of that, what I'll do is I will pop up our HUD and we will look at it that way. So here we are. And I should really, before I do that, I should wait till we're in approach mode. So let's go back out. And I'm waiting for this glide slope to start coming in, which it will momentarily as we get ourselves just precisely oriented here laterally, and we're waiting for the vertical part to take care of itself. I don't know if you can pop it into approach mode. Okay, well, in any case, before that diamond manifests itself. So there we go. Now it's gonna capture glide slope, and we can put up the HUD, and we can get ready to fly the mighty dash the way it deserves to be flown. Just check our flaps. They're set. And as you can see, Cat 3 is armed, which means we're otherwise already configured. And we're about to capture the glide slope, and we just did. And because we just did, it declutters our display automatically. And it gives us a speed target here. So I'm going to roll off the power just a little bit until we come nose down a touch. I'm going to wait for this to settle. You see the rain coming at us. We carry a little extra speed because of it. You can see we're about 2 degrees nose down, or 1.5 degrees nose down. And we're nicely settled. And because we are nicely settled, there's absolutely no reason not to go flying. So, with that said, with our speed a little bit high, we'll disconnect the autopilot. We're at the outer marker. We're good to go. And let's pretend we're pilots here, shall we? Okay, I'm at 152 knots. I'm going to let that speed decay. I'm just using the rudder pedals to keep my flight path vector and the other circle centered. Slow down a bit and trim up a bit.
Minimums.
There we go. And we're landing. And in reality, our minimums are 0, because this is a Cat 3 published approach, and we're Cat 3 certified, and we're right on speed and on profile. And I'm not peeking at the pappies next to me. Got a little bit of a crosswind to deal with. But looking good. Just going to declutter here and look at that. That's not bad. So we're just going to fly the airplane here. And down we come. Crab a little bit. Crab a bit more.
Sink rate.
Trim up.
40, 30, 20, 10.
And welcome to Omaha. This time we did the approach right, and apologies for well, I'm apologizing for something that you probably, what am I saying? You definitely didn't see, but just full disclosure, screwed up the first one, got it right the second time. And our next trip, our next leg, as we pull into the terminal here in Omaha at Epley Field, will be probably to KSTL to St. Louis. Might be to Kansas City, not sure. But this is how you do it the old-fashioned way, and as you saw, I mean, it's a little bit extra work, but it's not onerous, and it's a fun challenge, and you sort of have to build a picture of the world based on a few, limited gauges that you see. You have to sort of look at this and say, oh, there's, well, this is weird. Again, my controls are all screwy. I'm so sorry. I don't know why the landing gear's popping up and down like that. But with that, let me just leave you here and I'll sort out my problems, and see you next time.